Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today we're going to go over why you need to own 2,931 SUI and why you probably need to own it now, because we've seen a lot of crazy things happening within the SUI chart and just SUI within the overall crypto space. There's been a lot of super interesting things happening. Obviously the price has gone nuts, and realistically, based on like a lot of the hype and a lot of the kind of positive sentiment and news and growth and all these other things that we've seen within the SUI network, it's probably just going to keep going. And so we're going to go over a couple things, kind of breaking down why I think 2,931 SUI is the magic number, all that type of stuff. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive right in. So starting out, what we can see with the live SUI price chart, we can see that obviously we made a pretty quick run up to $3.30, pulled back a little bit, but overall, this is a pretty decent chart, only for the past month. We are pulling, like I said, we have pulled back a little bit, about 7% just today, but our market cap is sitting around 8.3 billion. Now, this is important because if we look at Solana, we can see that Solana is at 96 billion, and Solana has also pulled back a similar percentage. They were actually above 100 billion. And so what we can see looking at crypto bubbles on the day, everything is down, and everything's down pretty big. However, if we look at like the week, everything is still up huge, right? Obviously, SUI doing very well, up 30%, Solana up 9%. Obviously, memes doing really well. Peanut has kind of been one of the big winners. This just got listed on Binance, which is why it's done so well. This is obviously, kind of one of the recent meme coins that's kind of ascended to fame. And so, but overall, we can see very good week in crypto. Even though we are negative on the day, things are still looking really, really strong. And if we do look at BTCC, we can see something very similar in terms of, I've talked about this before on the channel, we can see bullish divergence on the RSI, which means essentially the RSI goes down and essentially the RSI gets weaker, meaning that there's more room for SUI to kind of spring up as it has some like massive price appreciation. And the thing that's really nice is technically what we can see by reading the RSI indicator is that right here, we can see that SUI is technically weaker than it was back here, but it's up 75 cents, or, I think that's like 35 or 25% above where it was. So obviously that's fantastic news, because technically from like a relative strength, SUI is weaker here than it was here, which is obviously always a super great thing if you are an owner of that asset, because it means obviously as price continues to go up, there's more and more buying power for it even on the way up. And so that's really important to note. And this is why I wanted to go over why you should own 2,931 SUI, is because this has kind of been the story of kind of everything recently. I mean, SUI has done fantastic. If we look even back over the past like month or so, even just going back to October 28th, so like 2 weeks ago at this point, it was $1.60 and now it's $2.97. So almost 2x in the span of 2 weeks, which is fantastic, especially on an asset this huge. Obviously, if you're looking at, something like Peanut or some tiny like meme coin, you can do a lot better than that. But for what you would consider like a really like blue chip ish, I would say, crypto, something that is essentially looking to compete with Solana, this is a really, really good news. And so looking at the chart, we can see the bullish divergence. Whenever you see something like this, in my opinion, this is a very, very great signal and something that essentially kind of proves that this project has room to run and it's got legs on it. So anyway, if you are interested in trading leverage or just normally, feel free to get signed up to BTCC. I do have a really cool promotion that I have partnered with BTCC for the month, and what it is it's a 10% deposit match essentially. So if you were to deposit $10,000, you would essentially get like $1,000 basically for free, right? And so you're able to do that. You can trade up to 500x leverage, and there also is tokenized stocks here on BTCC, which is super cool. Let me just get to that real quick, and you can see you can trade tokenized stocks, and you can also trade tokenized stocks on leverage as well, which is really neat. So if this is something that you are interested in, please feel free to use the link in my description below. Not only do you get that 10% deposit match, but you do also get up to 10,055 like USDT in various like volume and trading incentives if that is something you are interested in. So like I said, link in the description below. Anyway, moving on. What we wanted to talk about today is SUI and essentially like the 2,931, right? How I figured it would be best to explain this is via an Excel sheet. But before we go there, I want to talk about essentially how I'm kind of, or like the general framework for how I'm getting here. And what we can see is, so SUI is essentially, I would say, trying to do the same thing that Solana is doing, which I guess you could make the argument is like the same thing that like all of crypto is looking to do. At this point in time, I would say SUI and Solana are probably two of like the ones that people kind of expect to actually be able to pull this off. SUI has the theoretical transactions per second of, I believe, either 249 or 279,000. Obviously, a massive amount from what we've seen. Typically, Solana currently only has the theoretical theoretical transactions of 65,000, but I have heard of different upgrades that Solana is looking to do that will push that number into that 200,000, 500,000, million, on and on. But ultimately, like, Solana's kind of main goal is to be like, NASDAQ on chain, massive volume, super like short time to finality, all that type of stuff. And SUI ultimately is looking to do the same thing. And so if we are to equate these, and from a lot of the research that I've done, SUI currently has been relatively comparable and consistent with what Solana has been doing in terms of transactions per second. So if that is true, from a pure transactions per second perspective, we could say that they're about equivalent. Right now, obviously we all know that that's not true currently, because Solana has a lot more kind of an ecosystem built out. There's a lot more things building on Solana. There's so much more that Solana has going for it that gives it value that SUI is still kind of working toward. SUI obviously is a super young and new project, so it kind of makes sense that like it's not there yet, right? But I essentially wanted to make the comparison that Solana and SUI could potentially become equivalent if SUI hits a lot of the goals that it's looking for. So what we can see is obviously SUI 8.3 billion market cap, Solana at 96 billion. So looking at this Excel sheet here, I did just a couple of calculations to kind of go over the math of how we get to this number, and we'll kind of move from top to bottom. So what we can see, Solana market cap, SUI market cap, again, these are just approximations. But ultimately, SUI would need to about 11.5x to get to a comparable market cap of Solana currently. Now, keep in mind, as the bull run continues, I'm not saying that these two are going to become equal with each other, right? But if Solana essentially ascends to kind of being the ETH killer, ETH is sitting about 400 billion right now, so that could be a 4x just for Solana in itself. And SUI hitting an 11.5x would essentially at that point be like 25% the value of Solana at that point, right? So I'm not saying that this is necessarily becoming comparable with Solana at that point in time, because I think we can expect and we can count on Solana to appreciate in price as well. But this is what it would look like right now today, which I feel like is a somewhat like reasonable expectation. I do think that it's almost certain to me that I think we will see some project hit within the 100 to 150 billion range. We might even see like 2 or 3 or 4. Obviously, we're not going to see many, but I do think that we will see some hit that range. SUI could be one if it is kind of like the big winner of the cycle, right? Which, given the momentum and the optimism and some of the hype and the narratives, all that type of stuff that we look for in crypto, based on how SUI has hit it so far, I mean, I do think it is very much a possibility. And so looking at it, we can take the current price of SUI of 295, and now if we were to essentially move this to the market cap of Solana, it'd be sitting around $34. Obviously, as more tokens get introduced and the market cap kind of dilutes, this number will go down, but assuming it's probably going to be in the $30-ish range. Now, this number I picked kind of arbitrarily, but I was thinking like it would be nice to have $100,000 of SUI at this point in time, right? I think $1 million is probably a little bit far-fetched at this point, just because SUI's already moved up like 4 or 5x from some of the lows that we saw even just a couple months back. But $100,000, I mean, I wouldn't complain about that, right? And so that's how we would own, in order to own $100,000 of SUI, you need to own 2,931, which is how I came to that number. Now, if you have 0 SUI, I know most of you who are watching this probably have at least some amount. You may not have this amount, but you probably have some amount. If you had 0 and you were to acquire this today at current prices, it would cost about $8,600. So obviously, a sizable investment. At this point in time, that's probably just less than 0.1 Bitcoin. So definitely like not a small amount, but it's also not anything like super unreasonable, right? Like you're not going to have to like take out a second mortgage on your house to make some sort of investment like this. So anyway, this is just something to kind of keep in mind. Usually when I'm investing within crypto, I do like to see how some of these like goals I can essentially work toward and what they could potentially materialize to based on how kind of the market unfolds. I do think within kind of when we get into like the main alt season, we are going to see some staggering gains with a lot of these projects. Again, a project at the size of SUI, you're probably not going to be able to count on 100x, at least within this cycle. I mean, maybe if we see something crazy ridiculous happen, I mean, if Bitcoin runs to 500K and everybody's buying Lambos and whatnot, then like maybe, but I do think like, maybe next cycle we could see that. I mean Solana saw 100x gains last cycle, and so it's definitely like it's possible. I'm not saying it's certain, but it is possible. But I do think it's very likely to see 11.5x. I mean, if you look last cycle, there's more than I could count that did over 10x last cycle. I mean, we saw insane gains, and so something like a 10 to 11x I think is very doable. And so if that is something like, you know, if you're looking for like a goal, something like that could be something to consider. Again, this is not financial advice. Hopefully you can see there are many assumptions that I made here and some leaps that I had to take to get to where we got to. But hopefully you can see kind of why I did it and how it kind of makes sense. And it's more of just for like setting goals rather than some like steadfast, like this will make you a billionaire or anything kind of crazy like that. So anyway, hopefully you understand that and kind of realize that. But overall, hopefully you did find the information in this video useful, learned a little bit more about SUI, maybe even a little bit more about crypto, like tokenomics, market dynamics, stuff like that. If you did, please do give me a like and subscribe. It really does help me out, get pushed further into the YouTube algorithm, as well as grow my channel and continue to reach more people. So if you did, that'd be great. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, please feel free to drop those in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of my comments, so if you have anything that you want me to see, that'd be a great way to do so. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.